Before we get into the second reading, I assigned Chauncey a couple of different verses for many different reasons, not just to make him have to jump all the way around and know all those verses, but because one of the things that happened when Adam and Eve were kicked out or dismissed from the garden, however we label it, they left a place where they knew where God was. God walked with them. God talked with them. If they needed God, they could just say, "Hey, God," and God would walk over or be there. Now there's a flaming sword that is said to have been swinging like this, protecting Eden, and from that time, throughout all of the Old Testament, people have been wondering, where is God? Is God a voice? Is God in a burning bush? Is God on the mountaintop? And that question comes to us this morning when we meet John the Baptist out in a little spot called Bethany on the Jordan River. And the Pharisees who go out to talk to him want to know this question, where is God? Are you God? It's of note to know that Bethany is out in the middle of nowhere. It is along the Jordan River, which is really being generous calling it a river. It's a little bit smaller than the Tar River, if that gives you a mental image. And it is important to note that this is believed to be the spot where the Israelites crossed over the Jordan into the Promised Land. So John's an incredibly intelligent figure, knows his theology, knows his Bible. And that plays into why the Pharisees go out to see him. So, we are going to meet John the Baptist in chapter 1, verses 19 to 28. Listen to a word from our Lord through the gospel writer of John. This is the testimony given by John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed, and he did not deny it, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you a prophet?" He answered, "No." They said to him, "Then who are you? Let us have an answer for those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" John the Baptist said, "I am the voice of the one crying out in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of the Lord,' as the prophet Isaiah said." Now they had been sent from the Pharisees. They asked him, "Well then, why then are you baptizing if you're neither the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor a prophet?" John answered them, "I baptize with water. Among you stands the one whom you do not know, the one who is coming after me. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandal." This all took place in Bethany, across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. This is the word of the Lord. Where is Jesus? It's the question that sits with us even today, 21st century. We read this story and we wonder, where is Jesus? He's right here in our midst, as John the Baptist tells us. He pointed out in verse 26, you don't even pay attention to the fact that the one who you are asking about is actually right here. And sometimes the hardest thing for us, just as it was for the Pharisees long ago, is to realize that Jesus is in our midst. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and one that this story is going to help us with. Because John the Baptist is an amazing character that I want to dig into this morning. I don't know if you know this, but I learned something this week. But old American Western films, the hero always comes from the outside. They are either an outsider, not one of the usual characters of the town, or they literally live on the outside of town, or they have departed for a little bit and then they're brought back to come in and to save the day. Westerns, we do know this. Westerns were not around at the time of the Pharisees and John the Baptist. But I wonder if they were thinking, John the Baptist is that hero that's going to be called into the city soon. So the Pharisees send out the young priests, right? The pledges, let's call them. Go figure out what this guy is doing. And so they go out there, and I hope that you heard it, but it's a really funny interaction. Because you can tell that the Levites, they don't want to be there. No one goes out to this part of the country, right? And all they're trying to do is get some information from John, and John just keeps saying, nope, that's not me. And then finally they look at him and they're like, can you just give us something? Like, tell us who you are then. If you're not the Messiah, if you're not Elijah, if you're not a prophet, then what are you doing out here, okay? We got some really important people behind us that are going to yell at me if I don't come home with something. And John gives them the three I am nots. I am not the Messiah. I am not Elijah. Which in Israelite tradition, the Elijah character is the one who came out of the earth, never died, and when he returns, then the Messiah will come. And he's not a prophet. But I am a voice. I am a baptizer of water, and I am unworthy to untie the thong of the sandal of the one who is to come. He is a hero, isn't he? He is an anti-establishment hero before it's cool to be anti-establishment, right? And he says to the people who come out there, you can't label me. Because if I say I'm the Messiah, then you can take me to the Romans and you can have me killed. If I say I'm Elijah, then you can take me to a religious court and then hand me over to the Romans and you can kill me. And if I'm a prophet, then you know why I'm baptizing and you can take me into the city and you can dispose of me. But I am only a voice. I am only baptizing with water. And I'm unworthy to untie the thong of the sandal of the one who's to come. He's a hero because he's a pain. And it's absolutely amazing. And he became a hero to a fellow classmate of mine in divinity school. We started talking one day, and he said, Ben, I got to tell you something. I can't tell anybody else this. But when I think of what it's going to be like to be a minister, I have this mental image that I'm like Charlton Heston. And I'm coming down the mountain, and my hair is blowing, and it's amazingly coiffed, right? And I have this beard, and it's perfectly manicured, and I'm holding, I don't know if it's the Ten Commandments, Ben, but I'm holding something, and people are like, I want to be around that guy. And I'm a little bit of John the Baptist, too, because I'm wearing camel hair, and I'm eating locusts, and I'm hanging out on the outside. That's my image of what ministry is going to be like. People are going to want to follow me. I dubbed him Moses. And so we still keep in touch. And this week I was thinking about this because of his connection to John the Baptist. And I said, hey, Moses, how's ministry coming down the mountain? Let me tell you what I did today. I texted him. It was Monday. I took a doll that my daughter had taken out of the nursery back to the nursery. I walked outside and I picked up some trash that had been left overnight. And I made a cup of coffee. What you been up to, buddy? And he texted me back and he said, my hands are so dirty with ministry, Ben. And he sent me a picture of his hands. And he said, I've become a professional copy machine expert. That's ministry right there. We want to be the hero, don't we? We want to look at the face of the leaders, whether they're the Pharisees or whether they're the government or whomever they are, and say, you can't peg me. I am a hero. And we want to be like John the Baptist. And we should be like John the Baptist. But not because he's a hero, but because he says no to being the hero. John the Baptist is an invitation to each of us. He has 3 I am not statements, and he has 3 I am statements. I am not the Messiah. I am not Elijah. I am not a prophet. I am a voice, I am a baptizer, and I am unworthy to untie the thong of the sandal. Now, I was reading this commentary this week by a Presbyterian who teaches this commentary to a Sunday school class at a Presbyterian church. And he invited everybody who was reading this to do what he does with his students and the classmates. Write out 3 things that you are not and 3 things that you are. And I thought, oh man, that's kind of a fun exercise. I'm glad they do that. And then I thought, I should do that. And so I spent a lot of time and I came up with this list. I am not the Messiah because I cannot solve all of the problems of the world. I cannot solve all the problems of Howard Memorial. And I will admit I cannot even solve the problems of 308 South Howard Circle. I am not Elijah. After this sermon, Jesus is not going to break down those doors and come in and usher in the kingdom of heaven, although I pray it every time I stand behind this pulpit. And I'm not a prophet because I am not fearless. I am nervous every time I stand up here that I'm going to say the right thing or the wrong thing, that I'm totally off base. But I am trying to live my life so that it points to Jesus. I am a preacher who proclaims that Jesus is in this space and Jesus is everywhere that you are, and I pick up the mantle of John the Baptist. And I am not alone in my fears and my hopes. I'm not the only preacher that worries that he's saying the wrong thing. I'm not the only parent that worries that he's not doing the best job. I'm not the only human who's worried that I too am not worthy to untie Jesus' sandal. But it reminds us, when we say those 6 things, it reminds us we're all on the same playing field and that Jesus is in here with us. So I'm giving you homework. Yep, homework. Go home or do it right now. Take out the pencil and write out 3 things that you are not. I am not. And 3 things that you are. I am. And then try to live them. And I'll tell you a little story, because they're more helpful than I thought they ever would be. I didn't realize how powerful that story was for John the Baptist out in the wilderness. Because we want him to be the hero, right? We want him to save the day, but he knows he's not the one to do that. And he becomes a gift for each of us. Because his job is to point to Jesus and say, he's right here. You just don't recognize him. Friday night, Lydia and I got to go to a party. It was a party for First Pres Rocky Mount where she's working part-time. And here's the best part about this party. I got to be the traveling spouse for once. My job was twofold. Make Lydia look really good and have fun. And I knew that my job was going to be fulfilled by taking up stance in one of 2 places, the food table or the drink table. And we followed in the people who carried the Chick-fil-A platter, so it was decided right away where I was going to be all night. And so I sat there and I just said hi to people. Yes, I'm with her, the beautiful one. And I would love another nugget. And I just kept talking, but you know there's cross-pollination between Presbyterians, let alone that fact that many of us are related to people at First Pres Rocky Mount. And so conversations started to turn a little bit towards the fact that their pastor left in June. And their associate pastor left earlier this year. So they're kind of wondering what's next. And they started to ask me questions, what do you think, Ben? What do you think we should do? And I swear to you, the air conditioning turned on at that point and my hair started to blow. And I felt like I was holding something. And I was ready to answer, and I felt like y'all will love this. I felt like we were forming a committee right there. And then these 6 things came to me. And I reminded myself, I am not the Messiah. I cannot solve this problem. I am not Elijah. I cannot lay a foundation and then suddenly something amazing is going to come through that door. And I'm not a prophet. I don't know exactly what they need, but I know they need Jesus. And so I know that I'm trying to live my life and point to Jesus. And I know that I'm a preacher who proclaims Jesus is in this space. And I know that they are on the same plane that I am and that we are all unworthy. And I said, I think you guys should pray. It's not a great answer, but it's actually a phenomenal answer when you think about it. I think you guys should know that God is in the midst of all of this, even the good stuff and the bad stuff. That God is here, right here. Every time there's an invitation to be the hero, sometimes we want to live that role. But really and truly, we're called to be exactly like John the Baptist and say, that's not my role. But to point to the fact that Jesus is right here. Always has been, always will be. Whether at a party in Rocky Mount, whether at worship here at Howard Memorial, whether you're sitting at the bedside of someone who's dying, God is there. And we're called to point to him. Thanks be to God. Amen.